is Rachel, and today I'm bringing you a list of 5 books that I constantly find myself rereading. So when we talk rereading, a lot of times it's books that I just can't get off of my mind that I find myself wanting to kind of re-experience and see if I still feel the same way, if I can kind of recapture how I remember feeling the first time I read it, and really just kind of solidify some details from previous readings. So these are the top 5 that I keep tending to go back to. So first and foremost will always probably be the same book, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is simply just because it's my favorite book. I love this book. I love pretty much everything about it. This, I think, is the basis for my love of hate to love romances. I like watching the characters fall in love. I don't like being told the characters are in love because I find it hard to believe and hard to accept often in romance books or in contemporary books, but I feel like when they don't like each other and slowly begin to like each other and care for each other, it's a lot easier to understand why they like each other, and I feel like you yourself as the reader also start to fall in love with them. And in this particular book, we have a rather kind of very proud Mr. Darcy who does, at the beginning of the book, seem very difficult to like. He's very arrogant and seemingly like he's too good for everybody around him, very standoffish. And we have our main character, Elizabeth Bennet, who is a little bit the same, but in a much more likable fashion. She does seem to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more comically aware of her circumstances than any of the other characters in the book, but she doesn't necessarily hold it against anybody else except for Mr. Darcy, who she finds way too proud. And of course they keep coming together. They slowly begin to realize things about each other that they didn't quite see at the onset, and they slowly begin to fall in love, and I love, love, love it. I think some of my favorite exchanges in the book are just like the witty banter that they exchange, while I don't know, you can tell that there's something there. They're kind of feisty with each other while also being still a little like leery, but kind of secretly falling in love with each other. I just love the banter, and anytime I can find a romance book with that like sassy banter, I'm always going to be here for it. And yeah, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. When I don't have time to reread the entire book, because it is a little long, I do watch the newest movie adaptation. It's fantastic. It gives me my little like Pride and Prejudice fix in between my rereads. But definitely my top book to go back and reread. It's fantastic. I love to listen to it. I love to read it. And like I said, I like to watch it as well. So Pride and Prejudice, number 1. I would say number 2, it kind of surprised me. It kind of snuck up on me. And that is Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. I was required to read this quite a while ago. I mean, probably well over 10 years ago when I was working through my library master's degree, and it was on my list, so I read it. I didn't quite enjoy it, but it stuck with me. And then I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I just kind of couldn't get it out of my head, so I found myself thinking, let's give it another chance. Let's reread it. So I did, and I have just kind of continued to do that over the last, 10 or so years. And every time I reread it, I just like it even more. I find something else in it that resonates with me, or that lasts, or what have you. And it's just such a fantastic book. We're following our character who has basically self-selected being a mute at this point. She doesn't really speak much to anybody, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of reasons why she doesn't feel like she can express herself. Essentially, she's been attacked by what seemingly is referred to in the book as a monster, and this monster is still lurking through the halls of the school that she attends. And as the details unravel and you see these relationships she has with the other people in her community and her family and the school, and how she is working through all of these things and processing this, it's just such an amazing story. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it feels like good and horrible and everything all at the same time. There's horrible things that have happened. There's horrible situations continuing to happen, but there is just this hopefulness even in like the darkest moment of this book, I think. And I think it does feel kind of powerful towards the end, and I just absolutely love it. I think everybody should read it. This is one that I really would recommend too in graphic novel format. A lot of times the graphic novel adaptation feels a lot different. I would say that it very much maintained the same feeling to it. So if you would like to pick up the graphic novel adaptation, I think you're going to get the same experience. Both are beautiful and haunting and amazing, and like I said, I often find myself rereading this book. Next up is one that is like totally like a guilty pleasure, and that is the Shiver series by Maggie Stiefvater, specifically the first book, Shiver. And this is perfect for like this season, this like time of the year when it's getting really cold, and like especially as we head into colder weather, because our main character, at least one of them, is essentially a werewolf who becomes a wolf as the weather gets cold, and he is a wolf in wolf form the entire time it is cold. And he has done this for years and years and years, but as the years go on, he maintains his wolf form for longer periods of time, eventually heading into becoming a permanent wolf. And he's kind of had this weird bond with this girl whose life he saved a long time ago. She was being attacked by his wolf pack, essentially, while they were having a lean season, while they were all very hungry. They attacked her, and he ends up saving her life, essentially. And since then, they've had almost, it's kind of like a psychic connection, I guess, because she doesn't know that that's like a person, but she has like kind of this connection. She's very aware of the wolves that live outside of her house, and she's very curious about them, but also like obviously a little still afraid of them. But I don't know, this book is so angsty, and it's so just such a guilty pleasure read. Like, it's not something I would recommend as like the best literary piece that you're ever gonna get your hands on, but I don't know, I just love reading this series. It's just so atmospheric for me. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it just seems like the perfect like wintry scene. Do you know what I mean? You've got these wolves and the snow and the cold and like the angst, and there's a bookstore, and I don't know, I just find myself constantly rereading this. It's like I said, especially this first book. And I don't know, I just really, really like it. And like I said, I do tend to reread it often. I think this one I prefer to just read myself. I have done the audio before as well, and that's fine, but I think just straight reading it is my preference for this one. I think one that I tend to reread quite often as well is Stolen by Lucy Christopher. This is because this is like one of those books where you don't really know how to feel at the end. Do you know how, like, when you're watching a show and you find yourself rooting for essentially the villain, and you are not 100% sure if you're okay with that? Like, what does that say about you that you're rooting for the villain? In this case, you do feel very conflicted. We're following the story of a girl through the form of a letter. She's writing a letter to this man who captured her, and you're experiencing this all from her hindsight reflection. So you're getting the details from her perspective, and you're also kind of getting a little bit more of like an analysis of what's happened from her perspective after the fact. And it's so conflicting at the end. Like, it's unsatisfying in like a satisfying way. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it's like, it leaves you like just like wanting more, but it definitely does feel like an ending. It's not like necessarily like a cliffhanger where you're like, what just happened? But it's like, you just don't know how to feel at the end. And I think that's an amazing quality in a book. That means that you've really been kind of moved, you know, if you're just kind of like, okay, nothing's really happened for you as a reader in the book. But in this case, I am invested in the story, and I am shocked at the end every single time. And even when I know what's coming, I still know that I'm gonna feel the exact same way, and I think it's a lot of fun. I love recommending this book to the kids because they tend to feel the same way that I do. They go into it thinking they're thinking one way, and they always return it to the library and say the same thing that I think. Like, what is up with that ending? How can I feel this way? It's weird. And for just that reason, it's fun to dig back into the book and experience it again and again, because I feel like my reaction is very consistent, which is always surprising to me as well. So I really, really enjoy this one. Again, this is one I prefer to read. Now that I'm saying that, I don't think I've ever listened to an audio version of this. This is when I consistently read this one. So my preferred format, I guess, is reading. And then last but not least is the first Harry Potter. And this is kind of a weird one for me. And this is kind of shocking for a lot of people, because I tend to avoid really, really buzzed books. Like, it's just a total turnoff for me. If a book is getting just like the most amount of buzz, I just don't want to read it. I do feel a lot of pressure to read it though, especially now as a librarian. I feel like I need to be on top of all the trends, and people ask me a lot of times like, oh, have you read this book? What did you think about this book? So it does come as a shock to most people when I say I haven't read whatever book buzz is going around. And that's not to say I never read a book, but like, it seems that the more a book is buzzed about, the less I want to read it. So unless I get in really early on the trend, it's not going to work for me. Like Twilight, I kind of got in on the onset of that one somehow. I'd randomly heard about it, and I like read it before it like completely blew up. So I was like already hooked and on the train for that one. But I totally missed the Harry Potter bandwagon. And by the time I was aware of it, it was too big. It was a turn off for me. So I pretty much waited until all of the major release buzz died down. Like, all the books had been released before I even gave the first one a chance. And I just didn't like it. I really wasn't that much into that kind of fantasy yet. I mean, I was pretty much strictly paranormal at that point. Didn't like it, didn't get it. Put it down, moved on with my life, right? But the more I pursued a career around books in the library realm, the more I felt kind of guilted into liking Harry Potter and maybe trying it again, maybe trying to find out why everybody kept gravitating towards it. So I kept finding myself reading the first book and going back to it. And Speak, the more times I read it, the more I figured out what was happening, it seems like. But I think what really turned the point here is I had just kind of gotten into audiobooks about the second time I was going to read Harry Potter. And I listened to the Jim Dale audio version of this first book, and something just clicked in my brain, and I got it. I understood more of why people would be interested in this. Like, the world building is phenomenal in that first book. I think despite everything else that goes on with Harry Potter at this point in our world, that is an interesting quality in that book. The world building that we see there is pretty awesome. Like, you're learning all this through our main character's eyes, who's experiencing the wizarding world for the first time, just like we are as the reader. And so I definitely have read that first one quite often. I have not finished the series, which, again, that surprises a lot of people, but I am totally in love with like the magical world, the idea of going to a magical school. Oh my gosh, being the librarian at a magic school sounds like the dream job. But I would say the first Harry Potter is probably my favorite because it's the one I've read the most. Every time I start to read the next book in the series, I always go back and read through what I've read before. So obviously the first one has been read multiple times at this point, and I would say that's, so like I said, my favorite one in the series so far, just because of getting to experience all of the things for the first time, getting to see the castle, getting to see this magical world, getting to see the market, getting to see just what it is to be in this wizarding world. So that is also a favorite. And I know I said I'm only going to do 5, but I'm going to throw in a bonus one for you because this was, again, kind of a weird one. I would say The Fifth Wave is one that I have found myself rereading quite often. This is by Rick Yancey, and it is a dystopian novel that I don't think really differentiates itself that much, generally speaking. It's not one that stands out, I don't think, for a lot of people, but for some reason, the story of this girl in this post-apocalyptic world kind of like rambling through the woods with her brother's teddy bear just really resonated with me. And I just kind of get hung up on that. And like I said before, I just kind of every once in a while feel this need to reconnect with that first book and just experience it again. I'm not a total fan of how like the whole trilogy worked its way out, so I probably won't ever reread past the first book again, but I find myself often borrowing the audio of The Fifth Wave and listening to it and experiencing it again and again. I don't know. I just want to hear Cassie's story over and over and over again, and I don't think I've watched the movie adaptation for that one, so let me know down below if you think I should check out the movie adaptation, because I'm pretty sure that I have not. But there you have it, some of my favorite rereads. Shiver's probably going to be happening again soon, because I do tend to hit it right around this time every year with the winter getting colder. And thank you so much for watching. Let me know your favorite rereads down below, and I will see you again in another video soon. Bye for now.